Discover how 1 million women can contribute $5,000 to end homelessness by 2030 in today's episode with Dionne Payn. And what's so special about Dionne is that she is the founder of Women for Homes, a company whose mission is to inspire 1 million women to invest $5,000 to end homelessness by 2030. And Dionne has over 10 years in the property industry and has developed affordable housing projects, has raised over $45 million for ethical property developments, and has helped over 40 investors achieve double-digit returns. And Dionne is also the author of the #1 Amazon bestselling book, Ethical Property Investing. So, Dionne, please tell us, how can entrepreneurs participate in this amazing initiative?
Property Wealth Strategies podcast with Lily Patrascu shares world's most influential property investors, sharing their strategies for making money with property.
Oh, look, Lily, first of all, thank you very much for having me. And I guess the first thing to say is that it's a bit of a challenging time economically. So I know a lot of people have just gone, okay, we don't know what the economy's doing. Certainly in Australia, which is where I'm based, trying to create affordable housing has been really challenging of late because of builders going broke with supply chain issues after COVID and high interest rates and high levels of inflation. So a lot of people have been focused on, well, I've just got to look after myself and my family and make sure that we can ride through this rough patch. One thing that I love about entrepreneurs, though, is that they're always thinking of ways that they can make money, and this really is an opportunity in which to do that, because one of the things I talk about is how you can achieve double-digit returns through investing in affordable, sustainable and inclusive housing. I know I've done it. I know I've helped other investors to do that too. And so for entrepreneurs, it's really a way of looking at, well, what have I got, and how do I grow what I've got, and how do I make my money work for me, as well as solving a very chunky social issue.
Thank you. So tell us, how does this initiative of helping women, end homelessness for women by 2030, how does it work exactly? What is this $5,000 used for? And how can it help investors to gain some sort of return or benefit from being part of this amazing project?
Look, that's a great question. So I think it's probably useful to just talk a little bit about property investing in general. And when I talk about property investing in this context, I'm really talking about having investors come together, contribute, pool their resources so that actually the amount of money that can go towards affordable, sustainable and inclusive homes is much larger than an individual. So in a course that I do, I talk about how you can, be the one eater of the pie, and you can have a small pie, or you can be part of a big pie, but there's other people contributing as well. So it's that kind of syndicate investing or investing into a fund that allows you to, number one, invest in larger projects than you'd be able to do yourself. And also, number two, it actually reduces a lot of the risk in investing in this way, because it means that developers can work on larger projects. So the smaller projects tend to be more risky than the larger projects, just because of economies of scale and making sure that the numbers work on a larger project. So in terms of where the money's going, it's going towards projects that do provide affordable, sustainable, inclusive homes. When I talk about inclusivity in housing, it's really about making sure that everybody gets access to a home. So whether it's somebody with a disability, somebody that's traditionally been excluded from the housing market, such as single women with children, older single women, also in Australia, First Nations people as well. So it's really about making housing inclusive as well as transformative. So the $5,000 goes into a pool, whether that's a syndicate or a fund, and then that's then used by a property developer to create these types of homes. Now, the very important thing is, when we talk about affordability or sustainability, a lot of people can talk about that and but without the reference point of, well, what exactly is that? Then it can be quite meaningless, and it can sometimes just be a buzzword, sustainability buzzword, to make people think, oh yeah, this is actually really good. So what's important in terms of the projects that I put forward to investors is just making sure that there's actually the impact that is the impact is defined in the project itself. So if the developer says, okay, well, these homes are going to be affordable for women on lower incomes, and it's going to be affordable at 30% of what their income actually is, well, that's measurable, because then you can go back and say, well, yes, it is, or it isn't. So it's about having those measurable outcomes defined right at the beginning of the project, not left to chance, and then having those impacts reported on throughout the project and after the project as well, to just say, okay, well, yeah, we've looked at it, we've defined it, we've measured it, and then we're able to report on it as well. And that level of transparency is really important.
Thank you.
So that's awesome. Go.
Okay, you continue, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, well, that's the, in terms of the investing $5,000, making sure it's actually impactful, and then ensuring that those projects do generate double-digit returns. Often people think that because housing, when we talk about affordable housing, it's low-cost housing, and therefore, how can it be affordable? There's two things to say about that. One is that developers are by nature very creative. They take a lot of risk, and they have to be creative to make things happen. So sometimes they just don't think, but they have to think outside of the box. And in that thinking outside of the box, there's actually some really creative ways that they can work. So as an example, a developer that I work quite closely with, he was in an area where there were lots of properties, lots of apartment buildings, and he went and bought a piece of land and has put co-living dwellings on there. So he's in the process of getting those built at the moment. So that increased the density. So this is another part of the equation. That increased the density from what could have been maybe 18 apartment building property to 72 co-living rooms, with the rooms costing tenants about $350 a week, and that's with all of the bills and internet and energy included in that. So in that way, it is affordable for a large proportion of people, but also it's that density. By being able to increase the density on that site, the project is very profitable. And so when investors participate in those kinds of projects, where the impact is measured and where they are profitable because the developers created and manufactured that profit as a result of doing that, then investors can definitely achieve double-digit returns through those types of projects.
Thank you. Tell me, what does double-digit return mean? In terms of
anything from.
So let's say you put $5,000. What return can the investors expect to get?
Well, I do just want to have the caveat here. I'm not a financial advisor, and I'm definitely not offering financial advice. So anybody that's listening to this has to make sure that this kind of offering would work for them, and often that they would work with their professional advisors to do that. However, in saying that, when I talk about double-digit returns, I'm talking about returns above 10% per annum, and that's certainly achievable for everyday investors.
Okay, thank you. That makes it very clear. So the idea is that you are making this project affordable as well for potential investor women. I'm assuming that's the whole idea as well, that women are encouraged to support more women, maybe women who are have the capacity to invest in other women's projects. I'm assuming that's the whole idea, to make it affordable for women to invest in other projects. Because let's say that a lot of women would like to invest in projects, but perhaps having to put, $500,000 and, the mortgage for that is perhaps unaffordable. But $5,000, I think most people in the UK, Australia, US could put together in a couple of months. So it becomes an affordable way to invest. But if they have a lot more, I'm assuming that also is the idea, that you have the opportunity to dip your toe in the water and maybe put just $5,000. But if you have a lot more, then you can put a larger amount. Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's the idea. So let's just tease that apart a little bit. So initially, I have a sister company, High Impact Property Investments, and I've been raising capital through that business for the past 4 years. So raising it for those developers. And the minimum investments on those were in the range of $50,000. And I was, sort of trundling along, doing that and enjoying that, and just feeling really good about the impact I was able to create through raising $45 million worth of capital for developers projects. But then I had an experience at the end of last year, which was with a group of women. I went on a marketing and branding retreat, which was really lovely. 12 women were also part of that as well. And when I would talk to people about what I was doing, I'd talk to the women, they would say, wow, that sounds amazing. We'd love to be able to participate in that. And then, through conversations, we'd realize that actually they wouldn't be able to meet that minimum investment of 50,000. So that really had a profound effect on me. And I remember leaving the retreat and just thinking, gee, I've always thought that solving homelessness cannot be just left to governments to do, or cannot just be left to developers to do, particularly not developers, because they have to make a return. It's their business and their livelihood. So it really should be something that everybody gets to participate in. So how can I alter what I do to make it more easy for other people to participate? And one of the things that is really close to my heart is the number of women over 55 that are at risk of homelessness. The last count was that 405,000 women over the age of 45 are at risk of homelessness, and that's just not good enough. And I know women that are sleeping in their cars, that are living, camping in unsafe situations, couch surfing. I've even got a friend who's had to change country to move to somewhere where it's cheaper because she couldn't find affordable housing in the area that she was in. So I know a lot of women that are struggling from housing, and I just felt that this is an opportunity to get as many women as possible to help with that. $5,000 is a low barrier to entry in terms of investment amounts, and by helping women to be more financially secure, because in that investing they're also growing their wealth as a result of that. It's that way that we can end this homelessness issue, which has been affecting women for such a long time. And when I looked at some of the reasons for the increase in the risk of homelessness and the increase in homelessness in women, a lot of it came back to the gender pay gap, the gender superannuation gap or pensions gap in the UK, the gender savings gap, and where women are disadvantaged because of structural barriers, because we take time out of the workforce to raise families, but we're not actually compensated for that. And then we take that break and we're not contributing to our super, so we're not able to have that compounding effect of super, which works so well when you contribute regularly. We're not able to have that working for us. So there seemed to be a bit of an awareness gap. I don't necessarily think it's the education. There's a lot of education out there. But it's the education and awareness of, well, this is how it relates to me as a woman. These are the structural barriers that are happening, that I'm being affected by as a woman. And these are the things I need to do to secure my financial future so I don't end up in a situation where I'm at risk of homelessness. So that was a big sort of realization and a revelation to me. And that was what inspired me to start Women for Homes.
Thank you. Tell us more about what women, I guess entrepreneurs in general can do to help end homelessness, in particular for women, aside from what you already mentioned.
Yeah, well, I think what's interesting is when we talk about homelessness, people automatically think of charity, like I've got to give money to end homelessness. There's a lot of amazing charities out there that are helping women who are homeless. And I have no intention whatsoever of disparaging their work, because it's important work. But the question I ask is, how do we stop women, in that situation before they get to that situation? Do you know what I mean? So for me, it's important to go upstream and go, well, what are the factors that are causing this and how can I help with that? So what I find actually is women are really great at, providing a listening ear, giving advice, and sort of just sharing knowledge, collaborating, sharing resources. So for any women, any women in tech that are looking to get involved in ending homelessness, just remember that it's not just necessarily about charity. It's also about educating yourself, educating others as well, sharing resources where you can, just so that we can stop this rising tide of women being at risk of homelessness.
Thank you. What other steps do you believe should be taken for entrepreneurial women to avoid becoming homeless?
Look, I think the biggest thing is awareness. So when you understand the barriers and the obstacles in the way, and you really, you're really aware of them, then you can make different choices. So with awareness brings, you can make different choices. I'll give you an example. So I've got two children. They're beautiful, 15 and 11. And I remember when I decided to stay at home with my children when they were very young. And I had no idea until I read a book maybe about 2 months ago. This lady was saying how she knew, she was a financial planner, so she knew that the superannuation would be an issue when she took time out of the workforce. So she made additional contributions to her super to help boost her super. And now when she looks at it, and I'm not sure how old her children are, but let's say they're at least 5, she knows that there's not actually much of a difference in the amount of super that she has compared to her husband. So that gender super gap doesn't apply to her because she took steps in the beginning to avoid that. And I think she even said that she had more super than her husband did. And so that, I remember reading that and just going, oh my goodness, I had no idea. I could have made, if I'd have known, I could have made different choices, but I wasn't educated financially as a result of that. So it really is about educating yourself, finding women-centric investing advice, because the financial language does tend to be very male-dominated, and this isn't about a male or female, divide. It's just really about find the financial education that speaks to the experience that you have. Because then it's relevant. I remember reading the Financial Times and just going, I've got no idea what this is talking about. Like it took me, actually, I think if I read the Financial Times now, I'd still have some difficulty and need a dictionary by the side of me to just go, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? But I've read a number of books by women lately around, one was called Rich Woman, Poor Woman by Pascal Hellier-Moret, who was the lady that I referred to before around the adding contributions to her super. There was another book called The Joy of Money by a lady called Julia Newbold, and she had a co-author as well. The name escapes me at the moment. But it's reading books like that I'm like, oh, wow, this really makes sense, and I'm really enjoying them. Particularly one that's called The Joy of Money, because we grow up with all of these misconceptions around money, and so to find a book that actually celebrates money and goes, yes, you can have this too, was just really wonderful. So I think that my biggest tip for women in tech that are to make sure that they avoid these pit holes is just get really educated. Seek out those educators that are tailored towards women and providing advice that makes sense to women, and really follow that, and just be willing to look at where you're at without any shame or any sort of bad feeling about it, because we all have to start somewhere. However, with that awareness, you can make different choices, and that's what this is all about.
Thank you. What kind of mindset shifts do you believe need to happen so that more women become financially empowered over the long term and help other women end homelessness?
Do you know what? I think it comes back to love, actually. And this is a very random thing to be talking about in a podcast where we're talking about money. But financially empowered women really love themselves and love their future selves enough to take care of them from today, and not rely on, not wait to be able to, to sort that out and make sure that they've got a secure financial future. Sorry, just a second. Hey, Atticus. Thank you. Sorry about that. My son is home from school today, so he just walked out of the bedroom. I was like, shh.
It's okay. You can just continue. Yes.
Yeah.
Mindset shifts that need to happen.
Okay, so thank you. Yes. The key thing that I think is important here is that financially empowered women love themselves enough to look after their future selves now. Often we are at the point where we're like, okay, well, that can wait. We'll sort that out later. But it does come back to love. And then when you feel financially sorted, that's when you can share your resources and your time to help others make their situations better. So I believe that it all does come back to loving yourself for who you are, not feeling any shame or any embarrassment about where you are, just being really honest. Because if you can't be honest with yourself, then you're losing right from the bat.
Thank you. For women that have, let's say, a large family and they're counting on their husband to kind of support them and the children, and then perhaps they reach a point in their life where they don't want to be with that partner anymore, but they stick around and then finally they just can't take it anymore. And then they're all of a sudden maybe homeless or living in their car. What would you suggest that women, entrepreneurs like that do to secure their financial future way in advance of any breakup of a relationship?
Yeah, I like what you said there about how to secure their financial future way in advance of any bad things happening. And that is really important. So, and I have to say that I'm not a financial expert. I'm an expert in property investing, but in terms of financial experience, this isn't really my strong point. But what I am learning from other women who are amazing educators in this space is that you have to take control of your own financial future, even when you are in a relationship. Don't just, I mean, it's okay to let your husband do the finances if that's the strength that they have, but it's not an excuse to just ignore it and go, okay, well, he's got it covered and he will look after me. Because as much as we want our relationships to last and as much as we might love our partners at this point, you just have to be really careful. And so just it's really about taking ownership and just saying, okay, well, if something happens, and it could be a death, like your husband could or your partner could pass away, it could be a divorce, but it's always asking that question: if something happens, how am I going to take care of myself, and how am I going to take care of those that are close to me? And being responsible financially and knowing where things are at, even if it's one person's role that they may do it better, but it's just so important to be really aware of what's going on. And I remember listening to I think it was Kim Kiyosaki, so Robert Kiyosaki's wife. And she was saying that, yeah, she had in the past left a lot to Robert, and then she decided to take control of her financial future. And it was quite liberating. And they're still together, but just for her being a financially empowered woman, I think she's like the poster pinup girl for financially empowered women. It was just really great to hear that. And now I think about it, I listened to that maybe about 2 years ago. And so I can see how this sort of germ of an idea for Women for Homes has been happening since that time.
Thank you. Tell us more about, let's say, when a woman invests, let's say, $5,000 into this syndicate investing project. I am assuming that they also get like a fractional, I'm not sure what you call that, equity in the project. And therefore, they get not only the percentage return, but they also get the potential upside in terms of the property appreciating as well, right?
It really depends on the project. So if we're talking about a development project, which is sort of open and shut, you start it, you deliver it, and then you sell it. It would be, okay, well, this is the financial return for the whole thing. And it's not saying that I mentioned the figure to you before, 10%. It's not saying that it's 10% all across the board. It may be a greater amount depending on what the yield of that project actually was. But if it's a property that's there and it's held for a long period of time, then yes, you're right. There would be an upside over a period of time, and then it makes sense that the investor would be eligible for that. But it really does depend on what the paperwork says right at the beginning before somebody signs up for investing in either the fund or into a specific property project.
Thank you. What are the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make when investing in affordable, sustainable, inclusive projects?
Oh, there's a lot of those. um, well, I think even before people invest in those types of projects, I think that a big mistake that people make when they're investing into property is that actually they think that it has to be the same old, same old. So they're not concerned about affordable housing. They're investing into luxury homes. They're not concerned about sustainability. They're just, it's same old, same old. And I think that's a big mistake right there, because luxury properties, look, like I talk about a housing continuum. Like there's people that need transitional housing, there's people that need social housing, there's people that need affordable rentals, there's people that can buy their homes, and then you've got all the way up to the luxury homes and the end of life care. So there is a spectrum, and houses are needed across all of that spectrum, because we all come at different income rates and financial capacity. So yes, there is definitely a place for luxury homes. But if we put all of our eggs in the luxury homes basket, then that's not a great outcome, because economic shocks can cause that market to dry up or stop. People don't want to move. So things like that, where you actually think, oh yeah, I'm going to get this amazing return, and then you don't, because you're just focused on one type of product. Whereas what I like to say is that the affordable housing market isn't going away anytime soon. There are so many people that are in need of homes that cost no more than 30% of their income. Anything above that is mortgage stress, and that's contributing to an unstable economy. So we really do want to make homes affordable. We also really want to consider making homes more sustainable and more climate resilient, because I'm not really sure of weather patterns in the UK. It's been a long time since I've been there, but in the last few years in Australia, in the location that I live in, we've had bushfires, we've had floods. Sort of one year to another, we've had some kind of climate catastrophe. So if we're not building homes that are, number one, create affordable living, so our energy costs are actually affordable, and number two, are climate resilient, so that we don't have to rip out our homes every time we have another flood, or when we have a bushfire, that we know that the house is still going to be standing. It's really important to consider that as well. And because this is such a big area, I just think there's so much potential to be investing in these types of projects. In Australia, the government have said that we need 1.2 million new homes, well located and new homes, in the next 5 years. And I think we're about a year in. So let's say by 2030, that's the number that we need. Oh my goodness, we have no way of building those homes at the moment, not using traditional construction. So there's lots of space for innovative techniques such as modular building and 3D printing and things like that. So it's just, yeah, there's so much opportunity. I think that people do not need to be scared to look at this as an investment class when it comes to investing.
Thank you.
And then,
okay, I apologize. Please continue.
Oh, I was just going to talk about I'm going to talk about the ethical framework, because I wrote the book Ethical Property Investing, and I do have a framework called the Ethical Framework, which covers E for experience, T for track record, H for high impact, I for investment risk, C for collaboration partners, A for aligned values, and L for legacy. And what I've found is that, and this is looking at my own projects and other developers' projects, is you minimize your chances, you minimize the risks and maximize your chances of success by following the ethical framework when it comes to investing. So I think that you asked me about the mistake that investors make when they invest in properties or invest in ethical properties. It's really not paying attention to all of those things. And investment risk, I'll just pull out one of them. Investment risk is a big part of that. So sometimes people get blinded by, oh, you can make this amazing return and it's 20% per annum or 30% per annum. And those deals definitely do exist. I've done those kinds of projects myself as a developer back in the day. However, that you just need to know what you're looking for and make sure that the risk is Making sure that you're comfortable with that level of risk, that you know what the risk is and that you're comfortable with it. Because if you can't sleep at night because you've taken on more risk than you can tolerate, that is not a good outcome. And you're always going to be looking at the project going, oh, is it working? Is it working? Is it not working? Whereas if you understand your own risk profile and then can find projects that match that risk profile, you just feel more comfortable. So that I would say is a key mistake, just going for, what's this final number without taking into account, well, what's the risk, and how comfortable am I with that risk?
Thank you. Tell us where entrepreneurs can find you.
Okay, so my website is www.women4homes.com. So that's women, WOMEN, 4 homes.com.
Follow me for more property wealth strategies.